Hi, this is Terry, and on this video, we're going to be factoring the difference of two squares. So we're going to look at our problem here. We have y squared minus 64, and when we say factoring the difference of two squares, difference just means subtraction. And so we can see that right here in our problem right off the bat. We have a minus between two different things. And so it talks about the difference of two squares, and all that is, if we look at our y, that's basically saying we have a y squared. And then if we look over at our 64, we could actually rewrite that. 64 is just 8 squared, or 8 times 8 equals 64. And so there's like a minus sign between them. So this is the difference of two squares. We have y squared minus 8 squared. So when we write the difference of two squares, we literally just make two sets of parentheses. We put whatever's in the first squared, which was our y, he goes in each one. And then it will always be a plus and a minus. And then whatever was squared last, which is our 8. It's that square root of that 64. So we have y plus 8 times y minus 8. And this is actually completely factored. That is a difference of two squares. So let's try another one here. It may look a little bit different. We have 16m squared minus 9y squared. Okay, so on this, again, I have the difference of two squares. I know that 4 times 4 is 16, 3 times 3 is 9, so we have a difference of two squares. So let's make two sets of parentheses here, and we're going to start with our first term, which was 16. And we're saying, what is the square root of 16? Or what number times itself equals 16? And we know that is 4. So we're going to put a 4 in each one. Okay. Then we're going to look next to it. The next thing we see is an m. And we're going to look at that m, and we are going to put, there's two of them up there. So we're going to put 1 in each one because we have an m squared. Then the next thing we see in our equation at the top is the minus sign. So we're just going to put a plus in one and a minus in the other, because we'll always have a plus and a minus when we do the difference of two squares. Then the next thing we see is that 9. So when we see that 9, we think, what is the square root of 9? Or what number times itself equals 9? And that is 3. So we're going to have our 3 next. And then lastly, we look at the last thing we have here. We have a y squared. So we know that we just take one of each one of those and put in our parentheses. And we look now, and we have completely factored this difference of two squares. We just start from left to right and kind of work across. All right, let's try one more here. This time we're going to have 3z squared minus 48. I'm going to put a little line there so we can tell it's a z. Okay, so when I look at this, my first thought was, okay, it's a difference of two squares. Maybe not so much. Does 3 have a square root? It does not. So when I look at this, my first thought is, can I factor anything out of that? So they both have a number. Both terms have a number. So let's write both terms down, 3 and 48, and we're going to factor that 3. So 1 times 3. Now we're going to look at this, and we're going to say, okay, can 3 divide into 48 evenly? Yes, actually it can. 3 times 16 is 48. So we got 3 times 16 equals 48. So we know that 3 is going to be our greatest common factor. So let's factor that out. And if you remember, we just rewrite our problem down. So we have 3z squared minus 48. And then we are going to take, and we're going to use that greatest common factor and put it below each term. All right, so now we're going to divide. So we say 3 divided by 3, that's just 1. Or we can just say we have z squared left, because these two would kind of cancel out. Then we have negative 48 divided by 3, and that is negative 16. Now remember, we always put our parentheses, and we have to bring that 3 back down, because that is our greatest common factor that we factored out. So it looks like this. But if I look inside my parentheses, now I have the difference of two squares. So I can take that set of parentheses, and I'll put down 2 sets of parentheses for it. And remember, we start with the first one, so we have z squared, so we put a z in each one. Okay, then it's always a plus and a minus. And then we look at the 16. What is the square root of 16? It is 4. So we put a 4 and 4 in each one. But we cannot forget to bring down that greatest common factor that we factored out. So we have to keep him with it. And now, if we look back, and if we were to multiply this back in, we would get the original thing we started with. This is our factored form of this difference of 2 squares, of 3z squared minus 48.